Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie Potts, and I am going to share with you today a webinar that Danny Vega and I did a few weeks ago, as I'm just trying to learn how to do the live webinars more in practice before we start promoting them in the new year, and try to offer one live webinar each month with some of my friends in the industry of keto, low carb, performance, longevity, and talk about different elements that we kind of basically call, in my world, the holistic method. So working on nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, movement, and mobility. And then there's hydration, happiness, gratitude. And then, of course, we've got gut health, digestion, and lots to go into in that subject by itself. So I am having Danny come on today to talk about more the exercise part. I think a lot of people, especially switching to low carb, keto, carnivore, whatever, trying to balance your blood sugar out, eating more fat and protein and lower carbohydrates to burn fat weight, to lose fat weight, we tend to not exercise. I, of course, that's kind of my passion, has always been into fitness and health, and exercising is something I do every day. I just feel awful if I don't do something and move and sweat and get outside. And that's just who I am for most of my life. So I know it's a struggle for a lot of people to get up and get moving in the morning, to get outside, get to the gym, lift weights. And then there's a confusion, I think, of forever, a confusing topic of lifting weights that people, women especially, will get big and bulky. And a lot of people avoid that part. And they tend to go to the gym and do more cardio machines, chronic cardio, just leaning over that Stairmaster, step mill, elliptical, and just go at it for 45 minutes, an hour, and just do cardio, sweat, burn calories. Yes, but are you doing too much cardio and not enough strength building? Strength is a anabolic. It builds you up. Cardio, too much of it, breaks you down. It's catabolic. So you need a balance, as with everything we talk about. Not too much of this, not too little of that. Just the right amount is that Goldilocks effect to create the positive response that we need to improve our performance and work on longevity. And of course, everyone wants to lose fat weight, especially this time of year. But I think it's really trying to get more strength training, more intervals, more of that hormesis, hormetic stressors, that's kind of shock and then recover. And that's what burst training is. But strength training is really important to, get off the machines, lift some free weights, kettlebells, cable machines, just move your body, more functional movement patterns. I'm a big fan of working in different planes of motion. Danny's going to talk a little bit more about, bodybuilding, which might be a different subject for you, but it's great to listen to, and he's amazing to learn from. So this is a webinar that we did, and it's one of his topics of the seminars he's been giving this year around the country. But you can also go to his website and learn more on different programs that you can do. Maybe it's a New Year's resolution to work on a more of a strength training protocol and build some muscles and get some definition and dive deep into that. But Danny's a great friend. I met him and his wife on the low carb keto cruise this year, and that is going to happen again end of May 2020 if you want to join me. It is a pretty amazing event to go on that low carb cruise. I'm hopefully going there again. I am speaking on the cruise, and also I will be speaking at Keto Con on how the low carb athlete can improve performance and longevity. But part of the thing I love about the cruise is the time spent with everybody, just quality time, getting to know people that are in your community, that are into health and longevity, performance, bodybuilding, endurance athletes, whatever it might be, they're more understanding of, watching what you eat and getting the sleep hacks and, all the different things that we talk about. It's kind of fun to hang out with people, your tribe, on the cruise. So that's Jimmy Moore's Low Carb Keto Cruise. It'll be the 13th annual trip that they have. And so when we're at sea, we're down in the conference room having sessions 8 a.m. until about 5 p.m. with a 2-hour lunch break. And so it's conference time with about 100 people. People always ask me, this last trip I went on, if the whole cruise ship is part of the conference. Definitely not. It is a select group of people that register for the Low Carb Keto Cruise under Debbie Hubbs is the organizer that helps Jimmy Moore put it together. And we have speakers on the days we're at sea, as I said, and they're scheduled in advance so you can see who you want to go listen to. Or maybe you just want to go sit up on the deck and enjoy the sunshine and the great activities you can do on a cruise ship. The days we're at port, we don't have conferences. So you go on the islands or wherever we're going this time in the Caribbean and go play, and then we all meet up for dinner. And we have most of our dinner tables. Last time we had 5 p.m., the early seating for dinner, and we had tables by each other. And then a lot of times I didn't do the activities afterwards because I was kind of working on the ship. So I'd go back and work, but also sitting outside in the evening and just chatting with people as Danny Vega and Miriam and her husband Chris at the Keto Chow, and then Stephanie from Keto Endurance, and then I've got the Keto Evangelist girls. I mean, I had a new family, and it was just so much fun. So anyways, that's how I met Danny Vega. It was a great way to connect with everyone. And so this show today, we're talking about building muscle, and then we're going to record in a couple weeks about his program that he promotes a lot on keto carnivore. And he is Mr. Knows to Tell and eat all the organ meats and is very into that. So we're going to talk to him in the new year of how that works and all the benefits from it. If it's for you, you can find out. So let's bring on Danny Vega. He is a native of Miami, Florida, and he has a bachelor's degree in political science from Columbia University. And he played football there and was 3-time Dean's List recipient. Danny also earned his Master's of Science in Human Performance from the University of Florida, where he worked with the national championship men's basketball team, along with the tennis and golf programs. And he went on to become a strength and conditioning coordinator for VCU basketball, helping the Rams to the 2007 conference and blah, blah, blah. I'll put it all in the show notes. It goes on. He's done a lot. And he's a very high energy individual that you can't not love him and his wife and his kids. And they're just a wonderful family. So you can find him on the Fat Fueled Family podcast that they have together. And they're big onto Instagram of their workouts and every day. And I don't know how they do it because to me, social media exhausts me, and they are on there every day showing some video. So I hope you enjoy this. Don't forget to come back to us next month and listen to the carnivore podcast with Danny. And then we'll try to schedule out the webinars that I'll do in the new year with Keto Mojo and some other people coming up. All right, enjoy. Okay, so we are live with Danny Vega and Debbie Potts, the Whole Athlete podcast, and we're doing a keto muscle intelligence and to learn more from Danny Vega. So thanks, Danny, for making it on the show with your busy schedule. You're just telling me how you've been speaking all over the place. So great to get you come on the show and do one of our new live webinars.
And thank you for your patience with me trying to figure this stuff out. Thank you, Debbie.
Well, it's a good thing. We're just trying to learn and figure out how this Zoom webinars work, because it is so much fun to be able to share our slides together and once we get going, get Q&A session, and we can pull our listeners what you're trying to learn more of and what we can get from Danny Vega while we've got him here on the show live. So
I love that.
Danny, I'll let you kind of start. We're going to go through some of the slides and then we can leave time for questions on the end. So let's talk about you. Can you see the slides?
Yeah.
Great. So I'll let you take it from here. Why don't you share kind of your story and your passion, purpose, and mission?
Yeah. So, I've been in the fitness space. I guess my whole life, because I've been an athlete my whole life. And I started by playing football. I played college football. And if you see here on the presentation, it shows, I'm the co-creator of the Keto Muscle Intelligence program with Ben Pakulski, one of my best friends in this world and my business partner. And this Keto Muscle Intelligence brand, it's all about trying to get people to, or teaching people how to train properly, not only on a ketogenic diet, but in general, how to train. But it's important also to have that context of how to train properly to build muscle while on a ketogenic diet. My background, I got my master's in physiology from the University of Florida, and I was a grad assistant with UF football and basketball, as well as men's and women's tennis and men's and women's golf. And then I went on to be the head strength and conditioning coach for VCU basketball in Virginia. And I competed in powerlifting. I hit the top 50, and then I hit the top 25, and I stayed there for a while, even after I competed. And then I've also been ranked in the top 10 in indoor rowing, in the top 10 in this country. And I started jiu-jitsu a year ago, just about a year ago. So I'm a mediocre jiu-jitsu athlete.
Moving up the ranks, though. You're going up from there. It only gets better.
Yeah, I want to get into competing at some point. But right now I'm just trying to learn. And my passion, I guess, my main passion is nutrition and fitness, just trying to teach people how to train properly, trying to teach people different tools they can use to fuel the right way for optimum performance, and also just for optimum body composition. So this program and the philosophy behind the program is geared around that, but it's a lot more, because we talk a lot about the things that people are not considering when it comes to building muscle. Things like, your stress levels, things like your HRV, breathing. Yeah. And these are the things that I think in 5 years, you're probably going to see all over the place, but we just don't see it yet. And so that's what we're trying to teach people.
Well, that's kind of similar to my purpose and mission, is to teach people how to burn fat, and especially endurance athletes, because that's my background, and improve their health at a mitochondria level. It's just so important to work on building our health from the inside out, starting at cellular level, and then optimizing performance. And I think performance now, but in the future. So longevity, and working on the whole athlete from the inside out, that we work on nutrition and exercise, but also, as you're saying, the sleep and the stress is huge. And internal stressors, I keep talking about a lot more on my show, the hidden internal stressors that we don't know about unless we do some functional lab testing. So I know we've talked a lot about chronic stress. We met on the Low Carb Keto Cruise with Jimmy Moore, and, with Keto Con, and just stress seems like a big area people are missing, but a lot of people are curious about nutrition and fasting and how to get stronger and leaner. And I think what you're doing out there is pretty huge, and you're making quite an impact on the endurance bodybuilder world. But endurance athletes, I think, need to hear this as well, from what you've learned from your experience, and what you can do that you don't need to carbo load, and you can be looking super strong and lean as yourself and your amazing wife, and how you do it. That it's not just what we eat and how we train, but as we both talk about, it's the digestion, the gut health, and the sleep, and the stress, and all the other lifestyle factors that are so important.
Yeah.
So let's go to your next slide. It's Keto 101, and talk about this one.
Well, it's really simple. It's, first I just go into like what a ketogenic diet is not and what it is. And so, a lot of the time you see people doing keto, and, there's so many different ways to do it. And it's so context dependent, because you could have someone who needs high levels of ketones for therapeutic benefits, and that person is going to have to track their glucose ketone index. They're going to have to track glucose and ketones and make sure that they're at a specific level. Then you have other people who are just thinking, well, let me just cut the carbs, and there's really no no attention paid to the quality of the food. Is it organic? Is it local? Eating a bunch of keto sweets and keto snacks. And, I respect that. It's not how we do things. And in my opinion, it's not the optimal way to do things. It's also one of the things that I see is people don't exercise enough. And I think more people should exercise, even just walking.
Yeah.
I hear it so often where people are like, what should I do? I'm stuck. And, I the first thing I ask is, what are you doing for training? And a lot of the time people aren't training, and it's like holding one of your hands behind your back. So the last thing that this diet is a diet where you can eat any type of fat and still lose body fat. You need to pay attention to the right fat sources. This is where the quality piece comes back, where we should not be consuming hydrogenated oils, canola oil, all of these processed vegetable oils that people are consuming. And it's in about 60% of our food. And, a lot of people are eating out a lot, and they're not enjoying the true benefits of a diet that's not just a ketogenic diet, just a well formulated diet. You're not going to get those benefits if you're eating crappy food sources and everything's okay as long as it's under a certain amount of carbs. Now, oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I just was going to add to that's what I hear, and I read all these Facebook pages or posts on the group pages, the Keto for Beginners, and these. I don't know if you're in there on Facebook at all, but it's really stressful to hear all these questions like, no, that's not what it's about. It's about eating real food and fueling your body with these great nutrients, and not thinking you can eat whatever you want and expect the same results as somebody else, and just not even look at your liver function and digestive functions to see if, it's N=1 and everyone's individual.
Yeah. And I think that so often we go into these groups and we see people not addressing the issues that really are affecting them. And a lot of that is disordered eating. And people think that, well, if I just change the macro ratios, that I'm going to do better. And you might do better if you're doing a bunch of, non-caloric sweeteners versus sugar, and eating a bunch of sugary stuff that's not actual sugar. You may do better. Your insulin may be lower, but it's not optimal. And you see these groups and you see these people like sharing recipes every day for cakes and pies. And you go to the Keto Cons and you go to all these places and everybody's, sharing their samples of sweets and things like that. And people are patting themselves on the back and patting each other on the back and saying, great, you're doing keto, you're doing great. But are you really, And so, I think that we have to focus on, the quality of the food. We have to focus on the underlying issues. And you'll see in this presentation when I talk about stress. And I think that if stress is left unchecked, it's one of those things where it could be worse. You could be worse off if you don't address the stress issue before you even try the ketogenic diet. So let's go to the next slide. And it's just a quick stop on this slide is basically, this diet's great for people who want to simplify their diet. It's great for people who don't want to be packing, Tupperwares and doing all this meal prep because they got to eat every couple of hours. You can become more metabolically flexible. You can be burning more fat at rest. Your cognitive function is going to improve, and you don't have to eat as often, which is awesome. But now we'll talk about, with this presentation, the main thing is we want to talk about why people may not be, gaining muscle on a ketogenic diet. And there's 5 issues that we've kind of underlined.
Sorry, just trying to make sure we're live or not. So I think what you're saying is right on what I keep talking about on my podcast, the Whole Athlete podcast every week, is that it's really what you eat and how you eat it and when you eat it, and the importance of being in a relaxed state of mind, that parasympathetic nervous system, to properly digest your food, taste it, enjoy it, because I think what people eat is so important. And there's so many people doing processed foods that are so-called keto, as you said, and then rushing and not really tasting the food and chewing it properly and just multitasking while they eat. So I think it's so important to look at all these different factors, that it's just not eating more fat and dropping your carbs. There's more to it.
Yeah. And we talk about that with our boys. Cause like sometimes the boys, there's so much going on. They don't want to lose, they don't want to miss out. And like they come in to eat and they're like standing on the countertop, like eating their food, and they want to go back out and play. And I'm like, sit your butt down and eat your food calmly and then go outside. You can go play outside. Nothing's going to happen. First of all, we let them play until the lights come on. So they got plenty of time. And second of all, we let them do whatever they want. Like these kids can play all day. So, I mean, right now they're outside playing. So slow down, eat your food, and be present in the moment. But as far as the main reasons why, things that can hold you back from gaining muscle and gaining, burning the most amount of fat on a ketogenic diet, I always start with protein. So we'll talk a little bit about protein and energy intake. The number 2 is very important. You're going to see there's several slides on that. Basically, why you're not doing it is because you're not getting it done in the gym. And a lot of the time people walk into that gym and, the workout is on a long list of things to do today. And, it's like, okay, you got that done. And now what's next? But a lot of people aren't being present in the gym, and that can hold them back. And then
cell phone usage is pretty bad when I'm watching people. Like, you are not even focusing on what your form is and activating the right muscles. You're looking at your text messages or something in between your workouts.
That's so true. It's like, it chases us into the gym even. And the other thing too that I see is like, especially I see this a lot with guys, like doing too much work and not enough good work. So you got these guys that they go in there, they got some real heavy music in their ears, and, they're just, just working. And if you ask them, like, they think that they're doing the right thing because they're working hard. And I don't think that working hard for the sake of working hard is good or effective. Like, you want more is not better. Better is better. That's one.
I say that every show. More is not better. I say it every day.
Yeah. And, of course, now the other one is that people don't eat enough. And that's, again, the social media comes into play because nobody wants to go through that period where they're in a surplus and they may have packed on a little bit of extra fat, but it's what's needed to build that extra muscle. And then you can cut back down. A lot of people, they're either not going to gain that muscle or they're never going to gain as much muscle because they're always wanting to be ready for the gram. Like, and progress pics are, in the summer, I get it, when you're cutting or in a cutting phase in general, but there are periods of building. And I'm so grateful that I didn't have Instagram when I was 18, 19, 20, because that would have affected me. And of course, lastly is the stress piece. And we'll talk a little bit about, morning routines. We'll even get into supplementation and stuff. So that's basically the gist of it.
Okay, let's dive in. So number 1, protein and energy intake. So talk about this, because I know it's confusing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people, like when they see a ketogenic diet, like, one of the talking points is, got to keep the protein at a certain level. And since we're talking to athletes, we can throw that right out the window. And the reason why is not because, protein is protein. No, it's because we have higher protein needs. And like, if you have higher protein needs, it's chances are it's because you're carrying some muscle or your training demands are requiring more protein. And of course, that's assuming also that you are metabolically healthy and you have some semblance of insulin sensitivity and your body knows what to do and how to partition nutrients. So I always recommend that people increase protein intake at the beginning. Especially that first 3 weeks when insulin's dropping low and they're dropping all this glycogen. You want to just keep the protein high because trust me, that's that period, nothing's going to happen because the main thing that's driving ketones is just the absence of carbs. So, I just mentioned that like the gluconeogenesis thing is not something that is a given. It's like, if you're driving by a gas station, you're not going to fill up your car unless you need the gas. So if you're consuming more protein, it's not going to turn into sugar unless there's a need. It's a very expensive process to create glucose from protein. It's not nearly as expensive to do that from fat. So we have plenty of fat to create the sugar our brains need or our bodies need, or the demands during exercise. Of course, I like to give some numbers, and they're always just a starting number. But this estimate, the way I like to do it is just take your lean body mass. So if you're a 200-pound male with 15% body fat, that means your lean body mass is about 170 pounds. And you can set your protein to 170. You can even set your protein at body weight if you want, if you're very active. And then, of course, I do mention the fact that it's probably better to pace your protein intake a little bit to maximize muscle protein synthesis, because that is what the research shows. So you can do very, very well on a 2 meal a day regimen, but you may do better if you have 3 or 4 meals a day. And me personally, I'm not interested in that, because I'm not ever going to be, even if I'm saying I want to put on muscle, I'm never that much in need to put on muscle that I'm going to put more meals. I eat 2 or 3 big meals a day and I call it a day.
Well, I think it's harder to digest too, right? I
mean,
it's just, if you're taking all that, and that's what you're on Instagram saying about fasting, breaking your fast and having this great meal. And I think so many people don't, like, I have to take a lot of supplements to break down my new favorite food, steak and grass-fed burgers,
so cool.
I'm my new carnivore Debbie. But it is really hard to break down. So I think if you're eating a high protein, if it's more a carnivore style, or maybe you're doing more like whey protein shakes and stuff, they're easy to break down. But I think you have to be careful with if you have a poor digestion system to load up on, the real stuff all at once.
Very true.
Okay. So next.
So just again, like, if energy intake is, we'll get into a little bit more of it, but you want to set your fat at least equal to protein in grams, just to maintain a healthy body weight and to preserve muscle. But to optimize for building muscle, I think it's good to start at 1.25 to 1.5 times your protein and fat grams. And I'll give a real world example, because when we get to the energy piece of the equation of, if we're trying to look at it and make an equation for this, in general, this is just a starting point, because what's really going to drive your decisions and the changes and the adjustments that you make is going to be how your body responds to those starting numbers. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. And if you're low energy, there's some things that you can be doing that don't involve bringing carbs in yet. Sodium is such a big one. Yeah. And then other things that you can do, I'll share a few of those. I think that might be the next slide. Yeah. So this next slide gives a few of the different things that I like to do. I am a huge fan of alpha GPC. It's a choline donor. Not only is it great for just mental focus, but it's also great for, if you want to talk about digestion, it really is great for producing bile. So, and bile flow, just keeping the bile flowing. Alpha GPC choline is a very, very important thing. 10 grams of MCT oil or MCT powder in your pre-workout drink is something that I would definitely suggest, starting on the low end, and then, building up to 10 to 15 grams total. It's, medium chain triglycerides are very quickly absorbed, and so they're less likely to be stored as fat. So that's fat that can be mobilized pretty quickly. And then we can talk about, obviously, strategic carbs, especially this UCAN Superstarch. I just shared some really cool stuff.
We just did a video. Our last webinar last week was with them. So we've done a lot with keto. Keto for athlete, low carb athlete, metabolic efficiency is with using UCAN for endurance athletes for sure. But I like to see you talk about, or hear you talk more about how you use that before weightlifting for those that are, doing more strength training. And I know there was a big thing a few months ago of doing this 5-day, what was that? Everyone was just a huge thread on your Instagram.
Yeah.
You can, and you can't have any carbs. You're a keto carnivore. You don't need to eat carbs. So can you just throw in something about that using UCAN and how that's beneficial, that you can still be keto and that it does, why do you need it? Or is it, a difference if you don't do anything before a workout versus going for a workout?
Oh, it's so important. And you'll hear about it too when we get into the section on you're not getting it done in the gym, like, or you're not training hard enough. I've had one or two people tell me, I tried the UCAN, I didn't really feel a difference. And for the most part, I get tagged all the time because people are taking my advice and trying it out and just to try it out. And this is all, people using it for lifting. All the endurance people, they've kind of known about it for a few years now, 4 or 5 years. But the fitness or the lifting community is just being turned on to it. And this product is so freaking cool because, number one, it doesn't have any type of impact on glucose or insulin, but it does give you more glycogen. And it's basically giving you usable carbs that are not going to impact ketosis negatively. They're not going to impact glucose negatively. I just shared a really cool hypothesis paper that Dr. Jeff Volek wrote on our Carbs for Keto experiment. So he took all of our data and he just kind of compiled it and he created some graphs and wow. Interpreted it. Super, super cool to just see all of our stuff, being put into this paper. And this paper is really cool because he talks about fat adaptation and the evolution of carb supplementation. You have, everything was dealing with carbs. And then here comes low carb and keto and people get rid of the carbs. But what happens with these high performers, these people who are insulin sensitive and who can probably afford to have 100 grams of carbs every single day, no matter what, and stay in ketosis? If you are doing glycolytic activity, so if you're training like a bodybuilding style training, UCAN is very good because you're going to provide that extra energy, and you're already going to stay in that glycogen sparing mode that you already are with ketosis. But you're gonna basically buffer it a little bit more because you're getting that usable energy from UCAN. And what I really think is cool about UCAN is that there's nothing up until this point where I started to really do the research on UCAN and use it on myself, is that I couldn't really recommend anything beyond, hey, it's going to suck, eat lots of fat and take in lots of salt, but your training is going to suck for a while. Because, you're removing this one micronutrient that or macronutrient that you're used to using as fuel, and your body's very good at doing it. And you're replacing it with fat and ketones, and that takes a while for your body to get good at that. But what if you could give it some usable energy that's kind of like this kind of bridge? I think UCAN is a great idea for people transitioning to a ketogenic diet and using it pre-workout in that first 3 months. And then from that period on, you can continue to use it. I haven't used it it's been about, I guess, a little bit over a month because, I'm strict carnivore until January 2nd, but I'm looking forward to bringing it back because my training, I am, changing my training up to reflect that absence of UCAN, because it provided so much for me as far as not hitting a wall. So I don't hit that wall like I used to. And my ketones are higher when I'm taking in UCAN, which has been shown in a few different studies, which is kind of freaking cool, that you can be taking in a carb that's boosting your ketones and that may even be improving your glucose. I think Dr. Volek wrote something about that by the end of the 3rd week, it seemed like our glucose was trending lower, all of us, which I think is pretty cool.
How many people are doing the program?
Oh, it was only 7 of us, 7 fat adapted, keto, I guess, influencer people, friends of mine who have all been carnivore or keto for the shortest period was 10 plus months that someone was carnivore, but I believe that person was keto for 2 years, all the way up until 4+ years. And we all did the same workout. I gave them the Keto Muscle Intelligence program because, what better program can you do? And so I added that. And then we also did 1 carb up per week. So using a macro calculator that I created on Thursdays, we carbed up using the UCAN, but then we added a little bit of honey to the UCAN. And then each person, depending on their specific macros, was bringing in a lot more carbs. So I personally brought my carbs up to body weight in grams. So 225 grams of carbs on my carb up day. My fat was much lower. I brought it down the equal amount of calories. So whereas a typical day, my fat's anywhere from, let's say, 170 to 250, 250 on the high end, 170 on the low end, it was anywhere from 80 to 100 on my carb up day. So it was lower fat. Sodium and water are huge for getting a pump. I love Redmond Real Salt, but I also love Redmond Relight caps because it tells me how much sodium I'm getting. So two caps gives me 560 milligrams of sodium. And I'm like, man, that's pretty darn good to know exactly how much I'm getting. Creatine is huge. Creatine, methylated B vitamins are going to give you energy, and you're not going to have to worry about whether or not you have the MTHFR mutation, because it's going to give you the usable form.
Are you using liquid drops for that?
No, for the methylated Bs, we have Thorn. So we use the Thorn brand.
You should, I'll send you the link. I love the liposomal. It absorbs so much more in your body. But
anything liposomal, I'm sure.
Quicksilver.
Quicksilver, I've heard of that company. Yeah.
You got to use, I buy all my stuff pretty much through them now. It's liposomal, and it as a fat carrier. So it just breaks down, and glutathione I take from them as well.
I was taking a liposomal glutathione because of one of my genetic issues, but apparently it wasn't expressing itself because I didn't notice the difference of 2 months of taking that every day. And then I stopped. So I guess I'm out there in the sun so much. Taking in vitamin D. I got a lot of things working in my favor that but I did take the liposomal glutathione. One of the cool things that I've heard, who was it who's spoken about this? Oh, I believe it's Lauren Cordain, the paleo diet, Dr. Lauren Cordain. I think he's mentioned glutamine. And I think glutamine is great for gut health, and glutamine is great for your immune system and recovery. But one of the cool things about supplementing with glutamine as a 0 carb or low carb athlete is the fact that it's a very glucogenic amino acid. So you can create glucose from glutamine in a way that's going to be less taxing on your metabolism as far as blood sugar goes. So that's a cool thing about glutamine. Creatine is fantastic. I use it not just for getting a good pump and the quick energy that it gives me for that ATP creatine phosphate type of work, but also because it's really good for heart rhythm, for cardiac rhythm. And I have my dad and my grandfather both have cardiac rhythm issues. Glycine and collagen are very important. Magnesium, zinc, methylated B vitamins. These are all just things that I wanted to add because they're very important as part of my regimen.
So I'll just say one more thing and flip this slide. But the glutamine, one side note is S-Fuels. It's marketed toward endurance athletes, but it's for the fat adapted athlete, and it has glutamine in it, and it has barely any calories, but it's just glutamine and some other electrolytes. So
I like that combo.
S-Fuel.
S-Fuel.
F-U-E-O. All right, let's move on because we'll be here for 2 hours. So we only have an hour. So you're not getting it done in the gym. Now, I work out, lift weights Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I've been at the same gym since I was 13 years old. So I can see that I owned a fitness studio. Now I'm just, watching people when I work out, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say here because I'm sure I agree already. So let's go into this one real quick.
Yeah. So remember I mentioned the whole thing about it has less to do with how hard you work and much more to do with how focused you are and how smart you work, and big emphasis on focus. Golly, we are so unfocused. We are so scatterbrained right now. The cell phone alone it just turns you into an ADD person.
Yeah.
You are incapable of being present because you have too many inputs. And so a lot of these people, they keep those inputs coming in when they're trying to focus, and it's like, it's not congruent. Those two things are working against each other. So I still listen to music when I train, but it's different music now. Like I like electronic music. I'm not really like EDM. It's just weirdo stuff that Maura and I like. And sometimes I'll listen to hip hop because sometimes I am in that mood to just be like, maybe I'll do that today because I think there's a new Gangstar album. But so look, the whole thing about not getting it done in the gym is the fact that you have to pay attention to the way you're eating, and you have to match your training to the way you're eating. So two of the things that I want to bring up here, and you'll see as we go deeper into this presentation, is number one, adequate rest periods, which we'll talk about. So your typical bodybuilding stuff is big on keeping the muscles, or basically keeping them under tension as much as possible. So usually I think if you go back and remember what you learned in your PT course or whatever you learned in college is, that 45 to 60 seconds of time under tension to get a proper response for hypertrophy. And even not in the context of keto, that's not exactly accurate, because you have, I think it's myofibrillar hypertrophy, which is a little bit different. It's more based on, it's like strength. So you see like strong men have myofibrillar hypertrophy, which is not only form, but function. And then you have sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which is more what you're going to see in a typical bodybuilder, which is, it's full of glycogen, and the way they train is going to lead to that. And they got that big round look. But as far as the function of the muscle, it's not nearly as strong, but that's okay. I think it's important to have a mix of both. And I think that even though we keep the reps lower, which I'll go into detail why, you can still be hitting that sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. Then the other thing is you have to think about the fact that we are on a ketogenic diet, and we're removing a very important macronutrient. So volume's going to be lower. Rep range is going to be different. We personally train in the 5 to 8 rep range most of the time. You'll see things 15, you'll see things 20, but for the most part, it's 5 to 8. And we're taking longer rest periods, 2 to 3 minutes.
What do you do in your rest period?
For me, what I used to do is, like a rest period is never a rest period. So it's like I'm moving, or I'm doing something else, or I'm doing an antagonistic muscle. And, you can do that a little bit, but the way I see it is it's not something that I want to do all the time. So we have ongoing training programs that we're, because the program is 1 month, and, once you're done with that month, you can repeat it absolutely over and over and over and do well. But some people have opted to get continuing training programs. And it's really fun because Ben and I go back and forth creating the workouts. And so he'll make it 1 month, I'll make it 1 month. And I'm playing around with different things like supersets, which could allow you to get more work done in less time. But even when I superset, sometimes you'll see like a superset where there's a minute rest in between supersets, and then there's 2-minute rests after both exercises are done. So it's not, no matter what, rarely am I saying, do this exercise immediately followed by this exercise, because we're focused so much on building muscle. And that has been an adjustment for people, whether they didn't time their rest at all, or whether they were just going faster. They have to basically now be like, okay, I'm going to have to either walk around for 2 minutes, which I love to do all the time because I'm getting my steps up, or I'm literally sitting down and I'm just relaxing for 2 minutes, and then I'm flipping the switch, which is so much harder. It's so much harder to get like 35 to 40 minutes of really high quality work than it is to get 90 minutes of crappy work. It is much, much harder. So We limit the volume and we lengthen the rest periods, but we still see great results because we're executing these movements with perfect form and focus. And you'll see some of the reasons why we can do that in the upcoming slides. But this is even applicable to our friend Derek, who he's a professional bodybuilder. He's on a high carb diet, typical diet. He trained similarly to us, and he added volume and drop sets and shorter rest periods towards the end. But for the most part, he trained like us. And because of that focus, he placed second in the 212 pound weight class on the biggest bodybuilding stage in the world at the Olympia. He did that twice, 2 years in a row. So we have to look at exercise selection first, then we look at training volume, and then we look at frequency and intensity. And I break it down by each one so you can see.
So if you're applying it though to endurance athletes or people who just want to get leaner, not necessarily bodybuilding, I think, there's a lot of similarities, right? That you're working on all these things that if you're not maybe needing that 2 to 3 minute rest period, because you're not bodybuilding, need that rest to reset. But then if you're like, I have people, maybe myself too, do more mobility drills in between things, or I superset. So it's more of a total body workout versus bodybuilder. You have key muscle groups you're trying to focus on building up and getting stronger, that you might kind of have little changes. But this, you can use this program for people who aren't necessarily bodybuilding, and that's not exactly what they want out of it, but still get lean and strong.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I haven't mentioned it yet is that this is not your typical bodybuilding program. You know how usually people do a bodybuilding program and it's like, I do chest on Mondays, I do back on Tuesdays. Like, we don't do that. We think it's super important to, is this the first one or the second one?
There's this exercise
Okay,
selection.
so that's the first one. So like the first thing you want to do is you want to look at things that match your anatomy. And once you learn how your muscles function, you can, Maura has gotten really good, for example, at
her booty.
Well, of course, the booty, that to her, I mean, golly, she's doing it like every day, and it's unbelievable. Like, it's the hardest thing I've ever touched. Like, it's crazy. And she does a lot of stuff. Like, she's working at it from different angles. And when you understand the function of a muscle, but you have to understand in the context of your anatomy, because, if you're someone like me who has a big chest, for me to do an incline bench, for example, and have the incline higher than 30 degrees, like for instance, 45 degrees, that turns into a shoulder exercise for me. So I can't go higher than a certain amount. So you have to just focus on, number one, exercise selection. So you're picking something that fits your anatomy, not because your favorite, YouTube celebrity told you to do it, but because it fits your anatomy. Once you do that, then you got to focus on standardizing the stimulus. What do you mean by, I'm going to do 2 more reps next week? Does that mean that you did 5 sets of 8 this week? Could you honestly say that all 5 sets of 8 reps were exactly the same as each other? Because if you can, then yes, you can go heavier or you can add weight, but there's no sense in increasing the weight or changing the exercise because you don't think it's working. You just haven't focused on building that skill, and you got to build that skill so that every rep looks the same. So when you do when you train it the right way, it's harder to do. And the other thing that we talk about, like these compound movements, I know this is kind of controversial because I'm a powerlifter and I played football my whole life. But if you're trying to build muscle, you don't necessarily need to be doing squats and bench press and shoulder press all the time. You need to do things that maybe work for you. Like with Ben, he built the most massive legs, one of the most massive sets of legs in the world, with hack squats and leg curls. Lots of that, and doing it better. So let's go to the next one so we could go to exercise selection. We talk about contraction over completion. So you are going to be so much more mindful if you lift this way. You got to be more mindful because you got to go into that gym and you got to feel what's happening in that muscle. And if you're focusing on the contraction at every length of the contraction, that's when you're going to see results. So when I flex my bicep, right? When I do a bicep curl, that's the shortened position, right? That's easy. That's easy. Or when I do a pec fly, this is easy. How do I get a contraction in the lengthened position? you know, and that's how that comes back to the SSI, which we'll come back to next, which is, you know, set up, stabilize, and initiate. And so if you have the right setup, you have the right stability, and you initiate the right way, then you can get that right contraction at every length. So for me, if I want to contract my muscle in the lengthened position, let's say I'm doing like a cable bicep curl, I'm going to flex my tricep at the beginning and initiate the movement by flexing my tricep. And unbelievably, it's almost like, it's a very similar to like the whole reciprocal inhibition thing, like where you're stretching one muscle passively because the other one's flexing. You can get, if you initiate the movement the right way, you can get a contraction in the lengthened position. When I want to do a fly, if I want to get that contraction in that lengthened position, I'm going to initiate the movement by digging my traps and my rhomboids into that bench, and I'm going to feel that chest muscle contract in the lengthened position. So all these things are things that we really have to focus on, and we got to get better at less exercises. We don't have to do more exercises. Do way less and get really good at them. And I personally don't think there's anything wrong with going into the gym and picking 4 or 5 exercises that you're going to do for that day, maybe even 4, and do lots and lots of sets of that. So this is just an example. I do this when I speak, and I do this whole like attempting a leg extension. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. If you contract your hamstrings to initiate your a leg extension, you'll feel your VMOs, even though they're fully stretched and they're like the angles like this. How is it that they're activated? It's just by the initiating the movement the right way. So let's go to the next one.
I know we're running out of time quickly. But I think for athletes, so endurance athletes, especially triathletes, we're doing 3 sports. Plus, I want people to lift weights because cardio is going to increase your cortisol and contribute to chronic stress. And so the importance of balancing anabolic and catabolic is so important. And I keep trying to tell everyone, which is why I want to do this topic, is you need to lift weights. And as you just said, you can pick 3, 4, 5 exercises and do them 5 times. You don't have to spend an hour, 2 hours in the gym. And, I train people 30 minutes, come in, do mobility work before, do stuff afterwards. But, boom, 30 minutes. I can even do a workout in 10, You don't need a lot of time if you're just doing more functional strength, total body movements. And I just trained people the other day for 30 minutes in one spot using kettlebells, and you can make it easy. And I think a lot of times people, yes, they're not getting it done in the gym, but also they're wasting a lot of time walking across the room back and forth and, getting that squirrel distraction and forgetting what they're doing, that they just make it so much more time consuming that it really is. And you can get so much more out of your workouts in less time.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about is, so we have, wait, can you go back just for 1 second? Oh yeah. So you may need to train muscles that you can connect with more often. So like Maura, it took her years to be able to really fully connect with her lats, right? So she was training them more often, but now that she can connect with that muscle better, it's just like me. I can't. There's differences between our beginner and advanced. Our advanced program is a 5-day program. Our advanced day program is a 4-day program, and our beginners 5 days. That's because beginners need to work more on that skill acquisition. Yeah. So we have to get that skill. And if you're and if you're there already and you try the high volume, then you're probably going to overtrain, because like if I try to do too much volume, I'll overtrain. I'm too I have too much intramuscular coordination that it takes way less to stimulate my muscles, but it takes way less to fatigue them. So this was, like I said, this was the longest one that we spent the time on, but I thought it was super important. Let's go to the next one just so we can talk about that. Set up, stabilize, and initiate. So the intensity, you want to measure your contractions. That's what you want to measure. How hard are your contractions? So that's basically the gist of this slide. And then the last thing is the SSI. Set up, pick the right exercises, right? Stop doing the ones that people label as the best. I hate hearing best chest exercise. Can't say that. We're all different, you know? The other thing is like these compound things, bench presses, squats, barbell rows. Those are great for structural integrity and mental toughness. You want to make sure that you stabilize your muscles before. One of the things that we focus on, for example, is keeping your scapulas retracted before you do a pressing movement or a tricep movement. And that protects your elbows. Like Derek, one of the things he had elbow pain, and we would just start our workouts with an overhead tricep extension that came from behind him that he had to use they had these two little attachments, and you couldn't do it unless you had scapular retraction. And if we just warmed up with that, never had elbow pain. So if you're looking at the right setup and you're stable before you execute, you're going to get the best contraction. And then of course, if you're initiating the right way, which is all of the things that I spoke about, like you can do that with any movement, you can, if you initiate it the right way.
I've done this too. I mean, I'm personal trainer. Well, it's been over 25 years, but it's been longer than that now, but it's always, shoulder in the socket, scapula, the pull down and in the back pocket. And I learned that when I was in my 20s. I used to shadow the physical therapist next door to the athletic club where I worked and learn all these different things to how to activate those muscles, because as a personal trainer forever, you realize everyone gets his elbow tendonitis. You're saying, they work with their forearms. They don't activate their lats. They're all in their upper traps, and they're not even activating the right muscles. So I always love to teach people how to engage your lats, as you're saying, shoulder in the socket, shoulder blades in your back pocket, and then brace with your core, because your core is involved in every single exercise. And if you're not activating all those stabilizers, it's so essential to be able to lift more weight. It's like I can lift a lot of weight because I've got everything contracted and stabilized and ready to go, because I spent a lot of time building my foundational muscles and learning how to activate what you're saying, like set up, stabilize, initiate. So it's great.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up, and we could go to the next slide if you want, because the most important thing is like people, they don't understand that the body's going to find a way to do it, and that's the problem. Because we keep going up in weight or we keep adding volume, but we haven't fixed the skill. We haven't acquired the skill, and the body's going to find a way to do it. And it's either going to not result in a poor contraction because the muscle's not functioning the way it's supposed to function, or you're going to get hurt, which happens more often. And it's a lot of times it's these overuse injuries. So this is what we're talking about. Like, you got to train smart. So this is important for the endurance athletes. Certain types of training are going to lead to using more fat for fuel, as other ones will require more carbohydrates. And if you're not consuming carbohydrates, but you're training in a way that tends to burn through them, you're going to burn muscle. Because I give him the example of my uncle. My uncle's a triathlete. He's lean. But he has a 5.7 A1C, and he eats zero carb, and he fasts all the time, and he's training fasted. And this is an example, perfect example. I was like, what type of training were you doing? And he's like, well, I was in zone 4 a lot. And so he's doing this glycolytic training. Hole. Yeah, he's in the black hole. And the black hole exists in the gym too. I mean, we've never been able to standardize it in the way that Maffetone does it for running. But I do think of that black hole. And I think that it's not quite applicable, because when you're working for those, let's say 30 seconds that you're working, you're really working. I mean, it hurts. When you learn how to do a leg extension the right way or a leg curl the right way, it becomes a totally different exercise. You have to mentally prepare for it, And so that's adjusting the density of your training. So because you're training smart, your training is more dense. But that's okay. We can go to the next one.
Okay, I'm just watching. We have about 15 minutes to get.
Yeah, so these last two are pretty quick, and we can like kind of debrief. But total calories. So if you can actually be under eating and maintaining your weight, because our bodies are amazing that way, and we have this homeostatic mechanisms. But you could be eating 500 to 1,000 calories less than what you need and maintaining your weight, but you're underfed. And so what I like to say is 15 to 20 times your body weight. in pounds if you're tracking calories. And then that makes it easy because let's say you know that you want to consume 50 carbs a day. That's your number, right? You want to get or let's say you want to consume 25 carbs a day. That's
Is that
your
for
number.
a bodybuilder? Kind of 15 to 20 times your body weight?
Oh, yeah. So like for me, I mean, I'm always right around, and I'm not even trying to build muscle. I'm always like right around, let me see, if I were to say like 3,000, yeah, that's right about, so like I'm always at about 3,000 to 3,500. And my body weight, that's about 13 times my body weight.
Got it.
So someone who is a hard gainer is probably going to go to 20 times. So let's say this 200-pound male that I used in the past, he's got 15% body fat. So, you know, if we multiply him by 20, that's 4,000 calories, which I believe I didn't even use the 4,000. I might have used the 3,000. But he should be having, let's say, 170 grams of protein, 30 grams of carbs, and 222 grams of fat. That might not even be enough. So you got to just make sure you're eating enough.
So my thing is, like, all these people like to count and calculate your calories and track. I grew up dieting way too much, right? So I always bring up the fact that, you know, these different threads I read, like, what if you don't want to count your calories? Because to me, that's dieting, and that screws with your head. And then you get in towards the relationship with food and, you know, obsessing about everything. And I think there's so many people, as you said, beginning of the show, a lot of eating disorders. And, you know, when you start tracking your food and your calories and counting, to me, that's dieting. And then you're just too fixated then just using intuitive nutrition, going, all right, I feel good. My workout, I hit it. I feel amazing, super strong, great recovery. But then, you know, so many people say you have to count this much. So maybe in the beginning to just kind of figure out where you are as a baseline, and then to tweak it from there and micro,
adjust. I totally agree with that. Like I was just a tracker always, and I haven't tracked for like over 3 months, and I feel amazing.
It's freeing, right? When you learn how to do intuitive eating and training, fueling.
It truly is, you know, and I think that for some people, though, they're trying to do something that's very unnatural to their frame, you know, so those people, like, they have to, I think it's pretty easy for me to put on muscle. Like my dad, my uncle,
really?
they're all 5'11", 6 foot. Yeah. Like I carry a lot of muscle, you know, and I'm lucky to have those good genes, but they're naturally big. These other young people or these other small people that they really want to get big, they might have to do that at least to get a baseline, and then, you know, subtract or add from there. But I'm totally with you. You know, this doesn't have to be complicated as far as like, we didn't know what a macro was until like 100 years ago. So, you know, now the most important one is the stress. You got to get your stress under control, and you have to address these issues first. Now let's go on. Let's go to the next one, because we're just talking about the fact that we have lower carbs. So carbs are really good at modulating cortisol. And this is one of the main reasons why we mention carbs. Like carbs are not going to make you fill out more. Like I know that's one. Slide. Yeah, that's, you can go to the next one. Yeah. You can totally have, you know, your pumps in the gym. Now you might look better for a photo shoot or a bodybuilding show if you do a carb up, which I totally agree. But if you're fat adapted, you will have pumps and all that stuff, as long as you have enough.
Endurance athletes. What are pumps?
Yeah, that's true. You're like, pumps? My legs are pumped. That means I'm like having a calf cramp. Yeah. But these are things that I love to do, and I do them every single day. I'm going to do it as soon as we get off the phone here. I'm going to walk to the gym. That's a 3-mile walk. Walking outside is so important. Like there's so much, you know, across all lifestyles, diets. If you walk, you have less stress, you live a longer, healthier life. Breathe, diaphragmatic breathing as much as possible. If you've been talking about the math method, so they know to breathe through their nose. Breathe through your nose when you're eating. Close your mouth. Don't open your mouth. Breathe through your nose even when it's hard, as much as possible. We've done a lot of like research recently, Ben and I have, on even like retaining CO2 to drive that oxygen into the actual tissues that need them. And so doing like breaths, like maybe doing like 2 or 3 long breaths. And then on that last exhale, holding it for 10 seconds after you exhale and doing things like that. That's very, very helpful. Meditation and yoga, super important. I meditate twice a day in the sauna. I'm focusing on either my breath or my surroundings, or sometimes a sequence of moves as I'm doing yoga. And always remember these last two. Ben says it's impossible to be a victim if you're living in gratitude. And I like to add the fact that it's impossible to live in gratitude unless you're being mindful. So you have to be mindful, and that helps you remain in gratitude. I think we have one more thing here just to show like some supplements as far as like a day routine and a night routine.
So there we go.
Okay. Just real quick, sleep routine. It starts in the morning. I postpone my coffee until an hour and a half to 2 hours. I do my red light therapy right when I wake up. I ground, if I don't have time to go outside, I'm using a grounding bracelet. I do my meditation in the sauna, and then immediately followed by a cold shower. Like for example, this morning, woke up, got on the rower, did some rowing intervals, went straight to the sauna, did my meditation, went straight to the cold shower, did my cold shower. Then I did my red light therapy. I mean, this is a long process. And then at night, this is super important. Stop eating. This is the one that I found to be the best for sleep. Stop eating at least 2 hours before bed. Read for 30 to 60 minutes. Yep. So I'll read 20 minutes to the boys and then another 30 minutes to myself.
Yep. And
I put my phone to charge in the bathroom. And then you create your sleep cave. You want to have it dark. You want to have clean air. Some of these plants are really good to keep the air, purify the air. You want to have it cool, and you want to have as few electronics as possible.
That sounds like my evening. I do the same thing. I mean, I tell all my clients, I have my 5-day jumpstart program I coach people groups on, and the 30-day reset, rebuild, reboot program. And it is stop eating 2-3 hours before you're eating. And I did Dr. Mercola's, he has this book I read last year, Eat Fat, Burn Fat?
I haven't read that one.
It's his last book, and he had this online course I did, and he is a big fan of it's keto and intermittent fasting, and it's same thing as just not eating before bed.
He does cyclical keto too, right? He likes to use some cyclical keto.
Yes. And that works for me. And I think it's a great thing to do for endurance athletes, because if we're training longer on the weekends, you can do that. And it doesn't feel like a diet to me if I do, it's just so easy to do, do the sleep routine, and it's easy to do a 16-hour overnight fast when you stop eating before bed. And plus, I'd go to bed if I ate dinner too late, I would be not sleeping well. My sleep would be horrible, and I'd have digestive issues because I'd be lying down going, oh my gosh, I got my belly full, and you can't sleep. So it is great. Meditation, sauna. Now, what do you use for your sauna?
I have a Sunlight and sauna. I have the solo unit. I just have the solo unit. Because something happened, I'll be honest, like I have like an 800 something credit score. And I got rejected for the financing for the, I got rejected for the financing for the bigger Sunlight and sauna. So they said, well, you can buy this one cash. So I bought the solo unit cash.
Is that an M-Pulse or which one?
Is that what it's called? It's basically the one that it's a dome.
Oh.
So it's got the dome heats, but then also it has a pad. So I lie down inside the pad and the dome. And let me tell you, it gets bad in there. Like I found this new hack too, that I've been putting towels over the dome because there's a tiny little like space at the bottom where it touches the floor, and that retains the heat. So it heats up quicker. It'll get hot like in 12 minutes. And then once I'm in there, I'm in there for like 20 to 25 minutes because I do 2 guided meditations. And this morning I was feeling desperate towards the end. I was really having to like really manage my breathing.
Yeah, you need to do the meditation. Your life is so busy and you're like always on fire. So
I have to bring myself
twice a day.
I do. And at nighttime, it's been very helpful. I like to do sound baths at night. So instead of focusing on my breath, I'm listening to sounds, and it's just like, I'm always so grateful at the end. Now, these are just one last thing, looking at magnesium. These are like, if anybody wants to screenshot this or take pictures or anything, like these are really good things that have been proven to help with sleep. So potassium can help with nocturnal spasms that could be waking you up, whether you feel them or not. And you may think it's like, oh, I got to go to the bathroom to pee, but maybe the spasm is what woke you up. So think about just a little bit of potassium. Potassium could be problematic, so you don't want to take a lot. Magnesium, I take 400 milligrams of glycinate in the morning and then 500 milligrams of threonate before bed. Tryptophan is a really good, helps produce serotonin and melatonin. Adaptogens, reishi mushrooms are good for to relax you as well as your immune system. Ashwagandha is another good one. L-theanine I take twice a day. Zinc, taurine, and vitamin B6, believe it or not, can help if you want to remember your dreams more vividly.
Have you heard of natural stacks?
No, I don't think I have. What's in it? Does it contain like a lot of these? That'd be kind of cool.
It's a company. That's the name of the company. They're actually out of Seattle, but they have all these supplements and kind of for brain and sleep. And their sleep ones I love. So they have a Mag Tech and they have a GABA, which there's the nutrients that create GABA.
GABA,
so
yeah.
It's not GABA itself, but just all the like the B and different ones that you need for GABA production. And then their Mag Tech is, those different magnesiums that you have listed. And then they have a CBD Dream that I like. So I take all three of those sometimes. Ooh. And the CBD Dream has just CBD and a little tiny bit of melatonin that won't interfere with your natural production of melatonin, and they have essential
maybe like half
oil.
a gram or something.
Yeah, just little tiny bit, and then they have a lavender essential oil. Ooh. So those three are really good combos. And then I just bought some tea, the reishi mushroom, and I have ashwagandha and a different tea, but an herbal tea, where there's drops, adaptogen drops that I like taking.
Yeah, I like to put. I like to do like a nighttime tea, like you can get them. Any of these sleepy time organic, they have organic ones. Mm-hmm. They have, lavender, valerian sometimes. And then I'll put like the L-theanine powder in there, and I'll put the other things in there and mix it right in. It's a delicious, earthy, hot beverage. So yeah, that's basically it. This is the presentation. I don't think there's anything else after this point. That's just like, if you want to download the slides, actually, you can go to ketomusclebuilding.net and you can put in your email and get the slides. So I forgot about that. And you could also download the actual document that I wrote on this, which is all of this in a more digestible, like PDF version. Wow,
look at you. All right. Well,
I'm learning. I'm slowly learning, because all this stuff, like we've spoken about, you and I, like, for anybody who's listening, like we think that everybody else has it figured out, and that and that all of our friends that are doing this for a living, like, are more organized. And we just realize when we spend time with each other that we're all just winging it. We're all learning on our own.
It is. And there's so much new technology and different systems come out. So once you figure it out, then something else comes along better, right? And then you just move on.
True.
It's like,
my gosh.
God, just figure this out. Now it's the next thing.
Yep.
But yeah, well, thanks for playing with the webinar on Zoom. And then, we can always do it in the future, that you can ask questions for listeners when we have live listeners. And then there's polls. So you kind of get more of info, what they're looking for, and then questions that people can type in while they're listening. Then you can always address them at the end. So we'll put all this on our YouTube channel and share the video. And then you got all the links here. If you guys are listening to the audio version on the podcast, you can get this information on the show notes. I'll try to copy it over, but ketomusclebuilding.net. And there's other ones, but your new programs or anything coming out for the next year, Danny? What's going on next 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, I don't want to put out another program. I feel like we've done such a great job with Keto Muscle Intelligence and the Carnivore Keto Cut. I am turning my focus on, I think I found the name. I think we're going to call it Optimize 360. I was talking about it with Maura yesterday, and this is basically a course that I want to probably take this whole year to build, because I want to go through it myself. And I want to basically create something that is not only like a way for people to try to manage all the things that you and I are both talking about. And a lot of the people are, the health people are starting to realize, like the stress piece, like, just different things you can do with fasting and things like that, but also the mindset piece and the importance of going between different types of training and different types of eating. I mean, like I heard our good friend Simlan said this, and I've been repeating it left and right. Like the beauty lies and the magic lies in the variation, going back and forth between that, like I said, anabolic, catabolic, endurance and sprinting and things like that. And just becoming more resilient and using it in a intelligent way. So that's probably what I'll talk about at Keto Con. That's what I want to just focus on next year.
I'm speaking at Keto Con.
Woohoo! Do you know what you're going to talk about?
Yes. Well, no, I know the title. They picked the title. Now I got to figure out what it is.
Okay. Don't worry. You don't have to stick to the title because last year they said keto muscle building. They're used to me like being late with everything. So I didn't even talk about keto muscle. Oh, I did this year, but last year I didn't.
Yeah. Yours is so good last year. I'm on the fitness panel.
Awesome.
So probably with you. And then my topic is how to train the low carb athlete to improve performance and longevity.
Yeah.
So probably
longevity can be hurt sometimes. Like you look what happened with Mark Sisson.
Yeah.
He trained the wrong way.
It's what you're saying is Simland and everything I've been saying for years is that Goldilocks effect. Yeah. Not too much.
That's right.
You'll find the right amount for you. And I'm all about researching the mitochondria function because I think for athletes, endurance athletes, and people with chronic stress disease, as what happened to myself, is that we need to look at the mitochondria function, not just HPA axis dysregulation, and then look at your genetic profile. And I just did a podcast on that about DNA Fit. You should look into red light therapy or I have a friend who's the owner of Red Light Rising, because I bought myself the little Juve, like not the smallest one, but the $300 something one. Oh, actually, no, mine was $700 something. It was this big. And I shine that on my head as I'm meditating in the sauna to get that infrared in my brain and give that mitochondria energy. But then I have the long Red Light Rising full stack that for Juve costs like $2,000 or something. This one costs $865. Much better.
Just as good. And I hang that one on my wall. So I've been using that one. I was using it on my shoulder. I had a thing on my thing. So it's everything from
I had a thing on my thing.
A thing on my thing. like the red light therapy is really good for the skin and for the hair. And then the infrared is what is improving that mitochondrial, like giving it energy, but also helping it function better. And I think there's some data on increasing mitochondria. So those are things that like we want, like I'm just like you. I want as many hardworking mitochondria, well-fed mitochondria as possible.
Yeah.
Because like that turnover is
big.
And we're turning them over and not getting we're not getting as good as we were before that last cycle. That's what aging is, And so if we can provide that mitochondria, not only give it some more energy, but help it work better with fasting, with the right type of endurance training and with the right type of eating, gosh, I mean, we're on the cusp of something big, and we will, hopefully you and I will be one of the first to enjoy these benefits of like maybe an extra 10 years of good, healthy life,
Yeah, for sure. I think for endurance athletes and triathletes, marathoners, you're speeding up the aging process. So I've been trying to talk more and get more research, and I have the red light therapy book. Forget his name, the guy that's done a lot of research on it. It's not your adrenals, it's your mitochondria. And I'm just finishing Simland's book. I'm just like,
isn't that great?
I know. I have 100 different little tags in the book, but it's amazing.
I have it here, and I also have the. I've opened up because he sent me the cookbook too, and he's got some good cookbook.
Yeah, I was gonna get that
recipes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys will end the show because we can keep talking about our different treatments. But I've been doing the infrared because now it's at my house, so I've been doing it like almost every day if I can, and really want that red light therapy too. So if I could find that next year on my wish list. And I think, working on really training the whole athlete, as I talk about, working on nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, mobility, digestion, gut health, hydration, and happiness are the 8 elements to training the whole athlete from the inside out. So just trying to keep sharing the information. And I appreciate your time today to explain how to work on lifting weights and increasing that lean tissue, because everyone that often listens are endurance athletes who I think oh, I don't need to lift weights. And I keep telling people, yes, go lift weights.
Sarcopenia, osteopenia, God forbid you get cancer. I mean, the more muscle you have, the more resilient you're going to be, the more you're going to be able to like handle those ups and downs of life,
Yeah. Good. Well, thanks guys. You can find the podcast on iTunes and all the different podcast apps out there now. And then we'll put the video onto YouTube, and I'll give it to Danny to share, and we'll get more information out there with our new future 2020 webinar series of podcast interviews. All right. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.